This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of the GSMC Football Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and boy, do I have a packed show for you guys today. It's Week 16. The playoffs are right around the corner. I'm excited. I'm imagining you're excited, and we got a lot we got to talk about. We got some very, very, very important matchups coming up this weekend, and next weekend for that matter, so we got to touch on all those. We also got to touch on the playoff picture as a whole. Like I said, 2 weeks left in the season. Things are starting to come into shape, but like I said, there's some big games left, so the seeding could switch. Where we're at right now may not be where we're at in a couple weeks when the playoffs start. So we got to talk about that. Also, Pro Bowl roster were released this week. In my opinion, there were some very big and very obvious snubs. I mean, you guys may disagree with me, but when we get to there, I'll tell you who I feel like should have been on the list, who I feel like should have been off the list, and I guess we can see if you think my line of thinking is right. And then last but not least, I mean, we all saw Drew Brees Monday night. That man is sensational. Even at his age, he's still just as good as he's ever been. He broke 2 more records Monday night, and by the time he retires, he might have all the major passing records. So we gotta talk about it. Is he the GOAT? I don't think he's a GOAT, but I mean, look. By the end of his career, if he gets another Super Bowl, I mean, we could be having a conversation of him being. He's in the top 5, in my opinion, but where in the top 5, I'll let you guys know. And when we get to there, we'll see if you agree with me. But for starters, we first got to talk about the probably the biggest, if not the second biggest game of the weekend: Cowboys Eagles. Sunday, 4:25 primetime game on Fox, and I mean, it's going to be an interesting one, to say the least. Both these teams come into the game 7-7. Both these teams have gotten to 7-7 a little bit differently. The Cowboys started off hot, have faltered very much during the middle of the season, went 3-7 after starting 3-0. But they came back and had arguably their best, their second best performance when they played the Eagles the first time last week against the Rams. They beat up on them. I mean, this final score wasn't even that close, and the final score was 44-21, and the game was never that close. At no point did the Rams even look like they should have been on the field with the Cowboys last week. That's how dominant they looked, and that's how dominant they could have looked all season, but it just hasn't worked out that way. And as for the Eagles, I mean, it's rough. It's rough when you have some of the injuries that they have with the wide receiver position, especially in a league like it is now, where passing is paramount. The fact they needed to squeak by the Giants and Washington isn't great, but at the same time, it's what they needed to get to this point. I mean, at the end of the day, winning is winning. I mean, obviously, would you prefer, if you were a team, would you prefer to blow everybody out? Yes, but at the same time, they've done what they needed to do in order to get themselves in this position to have a shot at the division with the home game in Week 16. I mean, if you chalk it up, most teams, most players and coaches and franchises take that. Yes, obviously, would they prefer to be the Baltimore Ravens and be 12-2 and have their seed already locked? I mean, not their seed, but had the division already locked up. Yeah, but when it comes down to where they were at in the middle of the season and where they are now, if you would have told them that they would be at this position right now, I guarantee they would take it. It's one game. It's basically a playoff game. I mean, this for all intents and purposes should be called the NFC East title game, because technically, if the Eagles win, they could still lose to Giants next week, which, I mean, if we watch the Monday night game, it's definitely not impossible. But if they win, they're in the driver's seat, and then obviously if Dallas wins, the division is already locked up. So, all intents and purposes, this is the title game. And going into that title game, like I said, the Eagles are definitely banged up by a receiver, but, I mean, the Cowboys have some new injuries of their own. I mean, Dak Prescott, who has been nothing short of a warrior. I mean, you could say that for the first 4 years of his career. Never missed a game. Barely ever missed a practice. This week was the first time he's ever even been limited in practice before. So that tells you all you need to know about what he's done for this team during his time there. But he's banged up. I mean, he hurt his shoulder. It is believed in the first quarter against the Rams. Early on in that game, he went for a scramble. Clay Matthews landed on him. Right on. He landed on. He drove his shoulder into the ground. He got up. He was fine, but as is evidenced by the fact that he hadn't thrown the first 2 practice days of the week on Wednesday and Thursday, he hadn't really thrown. There is something there. Now, obviously, he said he's going to play. The coaches say he's going to play. His teammates say he's going to play. So he's going to play, but just how effective will he be will be important. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they still have Zeke, who has been dominant in his time with the Cowboys against the Eagles. He's 5-0, he's never lost. He averages about 141 rushing and receiving yards against them. So even if Dak just needs to hand it off to Zeke 30 times and only throw like 15 to 20 passes, that could be enough. But it'll be interesting to see because he's having a great year. He's second in passing yards. He's got 26 touchdowns. He's tops in all advanced metrics, whether it's QBR, different things for Football Outsiders, DVOA, DYAR, all those different things. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league, bar none, this season. But the part that you would most want to support about the Eagles is their defense. I mean, is their defensive backfield. Obviously, their defense has been a little shaky, but the worst part is clearly their backfield. And with their corners and safeties have been giving up big play after big play to just about anyone. I mean, look at even last week, they had Dwayne Haskins looking like looking the best he's ever looked as a professional. I mean, obviously it wasn't a great game. He didn't have like 300 yards or anything, but they've shown the inability to cover receivers time and time again, week in and week out. So, in theory, that may be what you want to exploit. Their run defense a little bit better, but like I said, Zeke's been dominant against them, so that I don't think he really cares about that. But the part you most want to exploit about the Eagles is their defensive secondary. So, if Dak is limited, that's an issue. Like I said, it's going to be like all their receivers are going to be healthy. They got Amari, who's a great number 1. They got Gallup, who's a great number 2. Cobb is a great slot. They're good against anybody, but obviously this is a week that they should be dominant. And if Dak is limited or he's forced to go out of the game, how's that going to work? Because the backup is Cooper Rush, I believe. We've never seen him play a meaningful snap, obviously. But it would be interesting to see what would happen if Dak is either doesn't play, but I mean he's going to play. Like, who are we kidding? But if he can't play, or if he has to come out of the game at any point due to being banged up, it'll really be interesting to see how that's going to go. And then from I guess switching over to a defense who's been a bit of a disappointment this season. They haven't been that bad, but like coming to the season, many people thought this could be a top 10, top 5 unit, and then just hasn't really been that so far this season. But I mean, last week they looked again about as good as they've looked all season against the Rams. Shut down Todd Gurley, had Jared Goff dazed and confused back there all day, getting to him, hitting him, making him throw inaccurate passes. They were all over the field last week. So if they can carry that into this game, they could. I mean, they'll obviously have a good shot. They already have a good shot to win, but like they have a good shot of maybe even limiting the Eagles to 7 to 10 points. The issue with the Cowboys is just like the issue in a similar regard with the Eagles is that they just been inconsistent. You never really know what team you're going to get. And like coming to that game last week, many teams thought, oh, the Rams are playing well, Cowboys are kind of struggling, they're going to blow them out of the water. The Rams are. Clearly that didn't happen because the real Dallas Cowboys, quote-unquote, showed up. And it's just like, is that same team going to show up this week? I mean, it should. It's a rivalry game. It's for the division. You're in hostile territory, so you can't really afford to get down big early. But it's just like that hasn't stopped them from not showing up at other games or throughout the season. So it'd be interesting to see from that regard which Dallas Cowboys team as a whole, and definitely which that defense shows up. Because if the Eagles can put up points against them, then that'll make the game interesting. Like I said, flipping over to the Eagles real quick, they're banged up all over the board. 3 receivers, Alshon, Deshaun, are already on IR, so they're done for this time. Not going to play. Nelson Aguilar has been having a knee issue since the Dolphins game. I mean, he had it before then, but it's gotten worse since the Dolphins game. Doesn't look like he's going to play. Jordan Howard hasn't played since the bye with the stinger. It doesn't look like he's going to play. Lane Johnson's been out with the ankle injury. I mean, he's a tough guy. He'll try to push through it, but it's high ankle sprain. You can't really. Those things take time to heal. It's not something you can just like be out a week and be back. And especially when you're going up against guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, Robert Quinn, Michael Bennett. You're gonna need to be as healthy as you can be, because if you're any limited at all, they'll take advantage of you, and then it'll be a disaster back there for Carson Wentz. So they're banged up all across the board, especially on the offense, but they're banged up all across the board. They've had to scrape, claw, use misdirections, use screens, use practice squad players, use rookies, just to even get points the last couple of weeks, and it's just like, is that sustainable? Like they said, they've done it. They did it against Giants, who aren't a good defense. Did it against Washington, who's a better defense, but still, they're not that great. And it's just like, how long is that going to last? How long can you keep throwing the ball to Boston Scott out of the backfield? How long can you keep counting on Greg Ward Jr., who was not only on the practice squad this year, but even earlier than that this season, he was in the now defunct AAF. And those are the guys they're counting on in a must-win division game. And it's just like, could it happen? Yeah, because it's happened the past 2 weeks. So anything, and it's football, it's the NFL. Any given Sunday, things can happen. So you don't want to, you definitely can't count them out. But it's just like, it's gonna be tough for them to consistently move the ball, you would think, unless they get another big game from Miles Sanders. I mean, Miles Sanders has looked like probably not the best rookie running back because Josh Jacobs, but he's easily been the second best in my opinion. And if they can get another 170 170 scrimmage yard performance from him, I mean, they might do it. They might do it. Now, do I think they will do it? You're gonna have to stay. You have to stay around after the break for me to get my decision on that one. And also, after that, I'll touch on the ramification of this game, because on both sides, it's a big game in terms of people getting new contracts, people getting extended, coaches getting fired, coaches not getting fired. There'll be some major ramifications from this game on both sides, and we'll touch on that right after the break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
We are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. Like, as I was saying before the break, who do I think is going to win? I mean, in my opinion, I don't really see how Dallas doesn't win this game, because as we've seen, if we've seen one thing with Dallas, is that they are a model of inconsistency. it seems like I said before, we don't really know which team's going to show up. One week they look like who they were supposed to be, the Super Bowl contenders. The next week they look like, oh, how did they just get beat easily by Mitchell Trubisky, or how did they lose to the Jets in Sam Darnold's first game post-model? Like, things like that have happened. How are they down to the Packers 31-3 heading into the fourth quarter? Like, they've shown that they're not a team that's gonna consistently put forth their best effort week after week for whatever reason that is. Because they have the players, they have top 10 to top 5 talents at basically everywhere on their team. They got a quarterback who was much maligned before this season, but this season has played like a top 5 quarterback. You have Zeke, who's a top 5 running back in the league. At worst, top 10, but I mean, it's hard pressed to find guys that, when going, are better than Zeke. You got Amari Cooper, who this season may not be a top 5, but is definitely, on average, a top 10 receiver, at the very least. And even if he's not, he's a high-end number 1. So, most teams would kill to have that. I guarantee you Carson Wentz would trade whoever for Amari Cooper this weekend. You got offensive line, you got three bona fide All-Pro, Pro Bowl caliber players. Another guy, Lyle Collins, at right tackle, who's having a great season. Got extended before the year, so that tells you what Jerry Jones thinks of him. On the defensive side, you got DeMarcus Lawrence, who doesn't, even though he doesn't have the sack numbers, is still one of the 10 best defensive ends in the league at worst. His pressures are up there, his hurries, quarterback hits, a lot of the other advanced stats are all up there. So you don't want to say just because the sack numbers may not be there that he's not elite, because there are obviously, everybody knows the sack numbers. That's how guys get paid. Excuse me, but he's done well outside of that. So he's elite. Even though Van Der Esch, I didn't touch on this in the first segment, but Van Der Esch most likely isn't going to play again. He hasn't played for a few weeks, but they got him. They got Jalen Smith, a top 5, top 10 linebacker team, especially at their ages. They're both pretty young. I mean, Van Der Esch is second year in the league, I believe, and Jalen Smith just got paid. He's in his 4th year. I mean, he missed the 1 year, but it's his 4th year. They've both been great when they're on the field together. You still got Sean Lee, who, if you saw last game, was running around, looks just as good as he's looked the past few years. So you got elite guys there. And in the secondary, I mean, that's probably their worst, in terms of talent-wise, probably their worst part of their defense, but they still got a Byron Jones, who's a bona fide number 1 corner. If the Cowboys don't pay him, he's going to get paid. So, like I said, it's just hard to see how the Eagles can find a way. I mean, I don't want to say they can't find a way to beat them, because, again, like I said, any given Sunday, it's possible. But it's just, when you match it up paper on paper, position by position, Dallas checks off the boxes on almost every situation, except maybe coaching. And even with that, I mean, Doug has a Super Bowl. Doug Peterson he has a Super Bowl, but the past couple of years, people are questioning how good he's been since his brain drain got taken from him, when Frank Wright left, when John DeFilippo left. I mean, both those guys are having their own struggles on their separate teams without him too. So maybe they just worked really well together. But people have questioned how good he is, and I mean, he's led his team to the playoffs back-to-back years. He's got them playing inspired and hard, even though they're undermanned at certain positions. So clearly he knows what he's doing. Obviously, like I said, he's won the Super Bowl, so he knows what he's doing. It's just that obviously he's had some question marks about him. So that's what might be one of the few places where the Eagles have the edge, is coaching. Because I mean, even though Jason Garrett, you don't keep a job for 10 years without doing something right. I don't care what they say about him just being a figure, just being a placeholder in terms of Jerry Jones really makes all the decisions, blah, blah, blah. Jerry Jones isn't out there on the sidelines on Sundays. So as much say as Jerry would like to have, and people think Jerry has, there's only so much that he can do from the press box. So Jason Garrett has to do something. So, I mean, like I said, even if you don't feel like he's a great coach, he's good enough to get, if they win this game, he'd be good enough to get his team the division title 3 of the last 4 years. So that's something to write home about. But so it's just I don't know. I really just don't see the way the Eagles get this one done. if it happens, I'm not going to say it couldn't happen. I'm not going to be that surprised, but just the way both teams are looking in right now, again, most of us is assuming Dak's healthy. If Dak is healthy enough to play and finish the game, then I think the Cowboys are in good shape. If he gets knocked out, then, like I said, we haven't seen Cooper Rush do anything in the NFL, so I'll be hard pressed to believe that he'll come into a must-win game on the road in a hostile environment and get it done. But, I mean, crazier things have happened. We've seen Nick Foles win a Super Bowl when it looked like the Eagles were dead to rights, so I never put backups. And we've seen a few different backup quarterbacks play well this year. I mean, Duck Hodges has played well enough. We've seen Ryan Tannehill come in. I don't want to say light the world on fire, but he's got the Titans in playoff contention when it looked like that team was dead in the first half of the season. So, like I said, backup quarterbacks can get the job done, but I just think if Dak's healthy and he can make it through the game, the Cowboys win. So, with that being said, is that good enough to get Jason to keep his job? I mean, probably not, just because, I mean, when you come into a season as a quote-unquote lame duck coach where you just have the 1 year remaining on your contract, and Jerry Jones has shown that when he wants guys around, he'll keep them around. Like I said, he gave Jalen Smith his contract extension for the year. He gave Lyle Collins a contract extension for the year. He gave Zeke a contract extension for the year. If Jerry Jones wants you around, he's going to keep you around, no matter what it is. So the fact that Jason didn't get that vote of confidence, even coming off a year where they made it to the playoffs, won the division, won a playoff game, I mean, they kind of got ran through, but like literally, as in the Rams had like 200 yards on the ground in the playoff game, you know, in the divisional round last year. But I mean, Jason, the past couple of years has had the NFC East number, and at the very least, if you can come into every season believing and thinking you're going to win your division, I mean, you got a chance. So I don't know. It's tough to see what's going to happen, and then that's just on the coaching side. I mean, Dak still hasn't got his contract yet. We'll see how he plays to finish out the season and into the playoffs if they make it. And also we'll see how healthy he is, because that might be a big point on if Jerry decides to extend him. You got Amari Cooper, who doesn't have a contract yet. He's going to be a free agent. Do they franchise him? Do they extend him? Who knows? You got Byron Jones, who's going to be a free agent. They can only franchise one of those guys, so you're going to franchise one, probably, most likely Amari, in my opinion. You're going to give Dak his contract because he's played well enough. He's earned it. Assuming they don't flame out to end the season, he's earned it. So Byron Jones might be the odd guy out, but you never know. I don't know Jerry Jones' mind. He might be thinking something different, but that's in that regard. But I'm saying, so back to Jason Garrett. I mean, I could only imagine what Jerry Jones would have to say if they lost this game. I mean, I don't want to say Jason Garrett would get fired on the field, but if it happened, would any of us be surprised? I know I wouldn't. I mean, Jerry has basically found every way to lightly criticize him the past few weeks. I mean, obviously this week he gave him some praise because they did well, but when they had the 3-game losing streak against the Pats, Bills, and Bears back to back, he basically said everything but like, next game you lose, you're fired. So it's like, if they do lose this game, does Jerry, like, what's going to happen? I mean, all I'm going to tell you guys is if that happens, get your popcorn ready, because that press conference is going to be one for the ages, I believe. But that'll be interesting. But yeah, so like I said, they're probably going to win this game, so Jason Garrett's going to get to the playoffs. And I mean, I think from there, he probably has to get to at least the NFC Championship game in order to keep his job. I mean, it's tough to. It's hard to imagine that when you're talking about a guy who, again, would have been in the playoffs 3 out of 4 years, to just be like, nah, we're good. But at the same time, it's just one of those things where it's like, if you can't get over that hump, and the Cowboys haven't been to an NFC Championship game in over 20 years, so if you can't get to that point, we're not even talking about Super Bowl, we're talking about just the game before Super Bowl. If he can't get them there, then maybe there's someone else that will. I mean, you got Matt Rule in Texas. You got Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. I mean, in Texas, he's at Baylor, but in the state of Texas, so it won't be that far for Jerry to go and find him. You got Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, who's been linked to Jerry and the Cowboys throughout the year. You got Urban Meyer, who, again, was another guy linked to the Cowboys. I mean, he's out of coaching, and you would think it'd take a big job like the Cowboys to get him back in, but you never know with these kind of things. So it's just like, I mean, if the Jason and the Cowboys don't get to at least the NFC Championship game, I mean, he'll be looking for a new team next year. And I mean, maybe that's best for him. Maybe getting out of the Cowboys shadow, getting out of Jerry's shadow, and showing guys like, hey, I do actually know what I'm doing. I do actually know what I'm talking about. Might be good for him. Maybe in the same way it'll be good for the Cowboys. Like, hey, you have a guy that got us as far as he could get us with this team. Maybe we just need a new guy to come in and take us over the edge. I mean, this is a different sport, but look at basketball. It worked for the Raptors. I mean, Dwayne Casey kept getting them to the playoffs, kept getting them to the playoffs. It just didn't work out. Nick Nurse comes in first year. I mean, obviously you got Kawhi Leonard, but Nick Nurse comes in first year, boom, championship. I mean, there's no reason to believe that same thing couldn't happen in the NFL. So, like I said, this game is going to be interesting. I would advise everyone to be tuned in because no matter what happens, no matter who wins, there's going to be fireworks both on and off the field. So you got to see that. But I have a next break. We're going to touch on one of the other big matchups in the league this week. I'll let you guys think about what that is. And like I said, we'll get to it after the break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, what game did you think, guys? What did you think I was talking about? Vikings-Packers? Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. Rams-49ers? That's another big one. That's another very big one. But nope, that's not the game I was thinking of. I'm talking about Bills-Patriots. Now, both of these teams look a little different than they did early in the season when they matched up in terms of how they're both feeling confidence-wise coming into this game. The earlier game between them, Patriots won 17-10. I mean, Josh Allen got knocked out. They were trying to make a comeback with Matt Barkley there at the end. I mean, he gave it his best effort, but it was never going to work against that Patriots defense. But, I mean, I'm just saying, the Bills coming off a Sunday night win in prime time against the Steelers, who again have Duck Hodges at quarterback, so not exactly Tom Brady, but they're feeling good. They're 10-4. They already got a playoff berth locked up, and now they're just trying to see, is it possible? Can we dethrone the Patriots for the AFC East? Now, it's going to be tough because even if they do win this game, they would still need the Patriots to lose to the Dolphins, I believe, in Week 17 to win the division. But I mean, the Bills have to come in feeling great about this game. Josh Allen's playing at a much higher level than people thought he would play, especially this early in his career. Their defense is lights out. Their defense is third in terms of yards, second in terms of points. I mean, behind the Patriots, who are first in both of those. So, even though they may not be the best defense on the field, I mean, they have a better quarterback, and that could help them in that regard. Plus, the Patriots have been known to struggle with guys that can move around a little bit. I mean, obviously, Josh Allen, not Lamar Jackson, though he has more rushing touchdowns than him this season. Interesting thing, I did not know that. Before doing some research, I was like, oh, that's kind of surprising, because you just hear about Lamar, and obviously, as you should, he's the MVP of the league. But when you look at Josh Allen, his running ability, it's just as big of a weapon for the Bills is not as big, but it's pretty close to as big of a weapon as it is for the Ravens with Lamar. So, and as I've said, the Patriots usually, if there's one kind of quarterback that can give them fits, it's guys that can move around in the pocket a little bit, extend plays. When they're playing man coverage back there, if they can outrun the spy, then you got nothing but green grass in front of you because all the defenders have their back turned. So that's the kind of guy that could give the Patriots some fits. And then obviously, like we said, the Bills' defense has been very good this year, and the Patriots' offense has been a little bit lacking. I mean, Tom Brady hasn't looked like his elite self. He's still one of the better quarterbacks in the league. I guarantee you over half the teams in the league would take him as their quarterback, but he's had his struggles this year. He definitely has his struggle this year. And also their just weapons are not what they normally have been. I mean, obviously they haven't had that many elite receivers during his time there. Obviously they lost Gronk, which was going to be a big issue before the season, and it's still a big issue now. But the biggest thing is just their running game is just not what it used to be. I mean, our offensive line has been kind of beat up this year. I mean, they just got their tackle Isaiah Wynn back a couple weeks ago from IR, so that's been an issue. But Sony Michel hasn't been what he was last season. James White is still good out of the backfield, but he's not really that much of a runner. Rex Burkhead is good in spurts, but just for whatever reason, their running game hasn't been as good. And then touching on their weapons, I mean, outside of Edelman and James White, it's like, who is Tom Brady throwing the ball to? He's throwing it to guys like Matt LaCoste and Ben Watson, who has been good but isn't exactly Gronk, so that's definitely a big deal. And I think pointing out Gronk again, that's kind of hurt them in the running game because, I mean, Gronk was basically an extra lineman out there. So I think they haven't really made up for that yet. And then, like I said, they got Edelman out there, but then the other guys are throwing too. They had the ABs, they had the Josh Gordons, and obviously both of those didn't really work out for different reasons, but they just didn't work out. But, I mean, I guarantee you if Tom Brady asked, he would, I mean, well, maybe not AB because he's got the legal situation. But, and then I guess, then Josh Gordon got suspended. So I guess there's really nothing, because even if Tom Brady won those guys, they wouldn't be able to play. So there's not really much you could do. But yeah, so he's throwing to guys like N'Keal Harry, who's a high draft pick, but he was spent the first half of the season on IR, and Tom Brady's a guy that you need to build chemistry with because he's very precise. He wants you to be at a certain spot at a certain time on the route, and if you're not there, it messes with the timing. I mean, most quarterbacks are like that, and most offenses are like that, where you need guys to be at the right place at the right time, but for a team, especially like the Patriots, it's even more paramount because Tom Brady is a perfectionist. He needs you there because that's where he's throwing the ball. And if you're not there, or you're there a beat early or a beat late, or you're a yard deeper or a yard shallower than you should be, it messes up the whole route, and then that turns a completion into a batted ball or an off-target throw. And so he's doing that. He's throwing other guy, Jacoby Myers, who's been on the field longer, but at the end of the day, he's still an undrafted free agent, I believe. So he still doesn't know the complete ins and outs of being an NFL receiver. So it's one of the things where they're struggling out there right now. And it's just, and even though I believe the game is in Gillette this weekend, it's hard to feel that confident about them heading into this game. Seeing the way they've played, seeing the teams they've lost to, where they've lost to arguably the three best teams they played this year, in the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Texans. I mean, Cowboys are up there too, and they beat them. But like we said, as we talked about, the Cowboys have had their own struggles this year. But yeah, it's just like when they've played the top tier or playoff caliber teams, they've struggled. So in theory, you would expect them to possibly struggle again in this one. I mean, I have very little faith that it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be a very defensive game, just like it was last week. I mean, both these teams have elite corners in Stephon Gilmore for the Patriots and Trey White for the Bills, who are capable of picking off of the balls if they're thrown their way, and then once they pick them off, they can easily return them to the house. So those kind of big swings in terms of getting points on defense could be very, very, very critical in a game like this, where I believe points will be at a minimum. And I just don't know. I mean, the Patriots are still going to probably win the division because, again, they play the Dolphins last week of the season. But if the Bills come in if the Bills come into Gillette Stadium on Saturday, actually, so that'll be cool. No college football, but you got that. Come into the Gillette Stadium and beat the Patriots. I mean, even if they don't do that much in the playoffs, that'll be huge for the future. And I mean, that could even in the playoffs, that'll be huge for their confidence. I mean, the Patriots aren't who they were or who they have been the past few years, but you have to feel good going to that. You always feel good going to that stadium and beating Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, the respective goats at their jobs. Brady at quarterback and Belichick at coach. You always feel good about that. So if the Bills can come in and do that, which I want to go out on a limb and say, you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and say it. I think the Bills win this game. And if they do, I mean, again, the Patriots are probably still going to win the AFC East, but the confidence the Bills are having, just like the way people are going to talk about the Patriots going to the playoffs, is going to be something. But yeah, I mean, that'll be a huge one. That like I said, that's probably, if it's not one above the Cowboys Eagles, it's definitely two right behind Cowboys Eagles. So those two games you're going to have to be glued to my couch for, and you should be too. I mean, they're going to be great, and they're going to have big implications for how the playoffs can shake out. So I'm not going to want to miss those. And speaking of the playoffs, we got to talk about some of the other teams, some of the other matchups, and where I think people are going to end up the rest of the season. Like we said, only 2 weeks left. We have a good idea of who the teams are going to be, but we don't really know what position they're going to be, who's going to get the bye, who's going to play in wild card round. So we got to talk about all that, and we will right after this.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
We are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. Now, as I was saying before the break, we got to talk about the playoff picture. So, we're going to start on the AFC side. And for right now, the seeds go as follows. Ravens number 1, Patriots 2, Chiefs 3, Texans 4, Bills 5, Steelers 6. Now, I believe those will probably be the teams that end up in the playoffs this year. I mean, depending on if the Texans drop their game against the Bucs this weekend, and the Titans beat the Saints, which is not going to be easy, but not impossible to set up and de facto playing game in Week 17 between the Texans and the Titans. So I believe, I wouldn't, we'll see if the Texans can hold on to that lead, but it's going to be close. It's probably going to come down to Week 17 regardless of what happens this weekend. But so I believe that, I think the Texans will probably win the AFC South. So we pretty much have the 6 teams locked in, assuming the Steelers don't fall off, even though they play the Jets this weekend, so they should probably win that game. And then the Ravens, at that point, may not have anything to play for, so they may be sitting their stars, but I mean, it's tough because if I were the Ravens, would I want to knock a division rival out of the playoffs if it's possible? 100% yes. But at the same time, am I going to risk guys like Lamar or Mark Ingram or Mark Andrews or Marlon Humphrey or Marcus Peters getting hurt in a game that means nothing to me when if I already have the 1 seed locked up? I wouldn't. But, we'll see. So I think the Ravens probably going to stay at 1. I mean, the Patriots, if the Patriots lose to the Bills this weekend, like I predicted in the last segment, they'll be 11-4. The Chiefs win over the Bears, which they should, but you never know. You never know. Like I said, any given Sunday. So the Chiefs win. They'll be 11-4. They've already beaten the Patriots this year, so I believe they would be the 2 seed. So now the Patriots are at the 3. And I mean, if that happens, is that a big deal for the Patriots? Not necessarily, because they'll be playing either Duck Hodges and the Steelers or Ryan Tannehill and the Titans in the first game in wildcard round. But the big thing for the Patriots, and one of the crucial things to why they've been so good over the past 15, 20 years, is that they usually get at least a first-round bye, if not home field advantage, throughout the playoffs. And anybody will tell you that playing a home playoff game is different. It's just different. I mean, look at the Eagles 2 years ago. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Nick Foles wouldn't carry them to the Super Bowl with the way he played outside of that first Falcons game without home field advantage, but I mean, part of the reason why some people believe they still had a chance was because of that. So if they had not had the ability to get the number 1 seed and lock in home field advantage, who knows if Nick Foles was able to go into Minnesota coming off the Minnesota Miracle and beat them in the Dome. Who knows they would have been able to go into New Orleans. And if it's anything showed last year, they had their chance, but they were unable to find a way to pull it out in the Dome last year. So who knows if they would have been able to do it if Nick Foles had to go on the road. So I'm saying playing home playoff games, especially if you're the 1 seed getting possibly 2 home playoff games, is crucial. It really is crucial. I mean, everybody wants to first you win your division, but then you gotta find a way to win the division. Then you gotta find a way to get a home play at home first round bye. Then you gotta try to find a way to home field advantage. That's how teams chronicle their what they want to do throughout the season. So if Baltimore is able to lock up that 1 seed and teams have to go through Baltimore with that offense and that defense and all those rowdy Ravens fans, I mean, it's going to be a tough place to play. It's going to be tough regardless because you're going up against the MVP of the league and the most unique offense in the NFL. So it's already going to be tough, but having to do it at home will be even tougher. And the same thing if the Chiefs get the 2 seed. I mean, even if the Patriots beat the Steelers or the Titans in the first round, you don't want to have to go into Arrowhead Stadium. I mean, they did it last year, but that team is not this team this year. Like, they still had, like I said, they still had Gronk on that team last year, and he was key. He had some crucial catches late in that game, in the fourth quarter and in overtime to kind of help and kind of help them get that victory in overtime. All they have this year, and like I said, they've already lost to the Chiefs this year already. So the Chiefs know that they can beat them, especially at least this year. They know they can beat them. So having to go into Arrowhead would be tough. So they need this game against the Bills on Saturday badly because I don't know if this Patriots team is good enough to win 3 playoff games, which might sound a little blasphemous seeing as they have Tom Brady, they have Bill Belichick, but. It's, I mean, as well, or I guess as mediocre is not the right word. As bad as they played against good teams, you want to play as few games against good teams as you can. If I'm the Patriots, I'm trying to find my way to make sure I get at least a first round bye. Home field advantage is probably out of the question, but at least let me get a first round bye. So I only got to play. I get to play 1 home playoff game. Then you're going up against a young quarterback in Lamar. Second time around, you kind of, not that you know what to expect, but you have a better idea of what's gonna come. Not gonna make it any easier to stop, but at least you have a chance. And then you never know if the Ravens get upset. Then now you're playing the AFC Championship game in Gillette. I mean, that's ideal. So I think that the playoff teams as they're set right now are probably locked in. But if the Bills beat the Patriots this weekend and the Patriots drop to 3 and finish with the 3 seed, I mean they're probably going to have a tough time to make it to the AFC Championship game anyway, but that'll be a huge storyline going into the playoffs and even throughout the playoffs. Just finding, can this Patriots team find a way to win 3 playoff games, 2 being on the road, and get to the Super Bowl? I don't see it, but crazy things have happened. And I mean, again, when you have the GOAT quarterback coach tandem, you can't ever count them out. But it'll be interesting to see if the Patriots can't get that 2 seed. And on the NFC side, you got Seahawks at 1, Packers 2, Saints 3, Cowboys 4, 49ers 5 at 11-3. That's absurd. And then the Vikings 6, 10-4. Jesus. Yeah, the NFC is kind of stacked this year. Outside of the NFC East. The NFC is kind of stacked. Now, I personally don't believe the Seahawks will stay as the 1 seed. I think that, they have the Cardinals this weekend. They should beat them, but the Cardinals aren't an easy out. And the Niners, they have the Rams, who I don't know. Okay, let me hold on. Give me a second here. Let me think about this. Because even though the Rams aren't that good this year, and they just came off getting the brakes beat off them by the Cowboys. The Niners, though they're a better team throughout the year, they're kind of banged up. They're banged up on the defensive line. They're banged up in the secondary. As you saw in that Saints game, the Saints scored 46 points on them. Again, it's in the dome, but that's not supposed to happen against that 49ers defense this season. And it did. So that's just one of those things. And then even last week, they didn't give up that many points, but they still lost to the Falcons, who basically have Matt Ryan, they still have Julio Jones, but Austin Hooper, but on offense, that's it. They trade away Mohamed Sanu, Calvin Ridley's done for the year, so they didn't have it's not the prolific Falcons offense that it normally is. And still, they found a way to get enough points to win in San Francisco. So it's just, man. Like I said, it's hard to beat a team twice. So I don't think, especially as close as that first game was between the Seahawks and 49ers, so I don't think the Seahawks sweep them, especially when they've played a lot of close games this season where they found ways to win because Russell Wilson's great. So that's bound to happen. But it's going to be tough to imagine that the 49ers don't at least win one of these two games against the Seahawks. So I want to say the 49ers will win week 17, but then at the same time, it's if they don't beat the Rams, then I don't even know if that'll matter. I'm not sure, but long story short, I think the Niners find a way to get back into the 1 seed. So if that happens, then we got the Packers, who have their own big game. Like I said, there's so many good games. That's the great thing about the end of the season, is that when there's so many games that matter. And the Packers play their own good game against the Vikings this weekend on Monday night. No Dalvin Cook, most likely. Alexander Mattison, their backup, most likely might not play either. So you're going into that game with Amir Abdullah and Boone, who looked good last week, but they're not Dalvin Cook. That offense is definitely going to look different. And that's the issue, is that in theory, the Packers, not in theory, they've been a team that you can run on this year. So you don't want to turn one-dimensional and have the Smith boys coming off the edge against you, and then have Jair Alexander, and Kevin King and Amos and those guys roaming around back there waiting to pick off Kirk. So that'll be tough. But I think the Packers probably find a way. No Dalvin Cook is going to be tough. The offense is going to look a lot different. The offense is predicated on running the ball, predicated on play action for the Vikings, and without Dalvin Cook, both those things take a hit. Not, again, Cook's played well in the season where it shouldn't just completely tank the offense, but it's going to be tough for them to move the ball as effectively as they could. So the Packers win that game. They play the Lions last game of the season. They probably should win both of those. Saints got the Titans and Panthers. They could lose to the Titans, but I don't know. Well, actually, no, because it's Drew Brees outside of the dome. He's not as good outdoors. But they're still in theory a better team than the Titans. So they should win that game. And they play the Panthers last week of the season. That shouldn't matter. So there's a real possibility that we could have 3 13-3 teams heading to the playoffs. The top 3 seeds of the AFC, which is just absurd when you think about the 4th team is going to be either the Cowboys or the Eagles at best 9-7, possibly even 8-8, depending on if the Cowboys rest their starters next week, which they should. But it's just going to be funny to imagine. So then you got that. So then the 5 seed, so 1 49ers, I believe, 2 Packers, 3 Saints, 4 Cowboys, like I said earlier, 5 Seahawks, who, if there's a team that I think the Cowboys would want to play, if they could pick between the Niners and the Seahawks, even though they'll be playing a tough Week 17 game, we're going to have to play their guys and they won't be as rested, I'd still take the Seahawks because they've shown they can beat them in the past. They very clearly beat them last year in the playoffs in the same scenario. And it's just, I just want nothing to do with if Sherman's healthy, if Bosa's healthy, D4 is healthy. If all those guys, I don't want to have anything to do with them coming into Jerry's world. It's going to be perfect conditions. Kyle Shanahan will have some stuff schemed up. They don't have anybody that can cover George Kittle for the Cowboys. So if I were the Cowboys, I wouldn't want to see them. I mean, no one's going to say that, oh, we're in the playoffs, we don't want to play this team, blah, blah, blah. Like, obviously no one's going to say that. But if you're the Cowboys, you definitely prefer to play the Seahawks. So that's how I think they'll probably be at 5. And then the Vikings will stay at 6 because I don't see them losing out. Even though they got the Packers and the Bears, so there are two teams that are going to try to beat them, but also that would require the Rams to beat the 49ers and then beat the Cardinals last game of the season. Then who knows? We'll see what the ramifications are of that Cowboys game this weekend for the Rams. But I think the Vikings find a way to get into the playoffs. It would be a real shame if Kirk had this great season and then choked it up at the end. But I don't think they will. So as it goes for the NFC, I think the playoffs are going to end up 1 Niners, 2 Packers, 3 Saints, 4 Cowboys, 5 Seahawks, and 6 Vikings. And I mean, on both sides, there's going to be some interesting matchups. There's going to be some fun games, and I'm already salivating over some of the matchups and some of the games and some of the things we're going to see during the playoffs. And we're not even there yet, and I already can't wait. But for talking about some of the best teams, we got to talk about some of the best players. And we're going to talk about the Pro Bowl after this, and we're going to talk about the guys who I believe got snubbed. And I feel like you probably already have a decent idea of who those are. Maybe you agree that everything was right in the fan voters, the media, the coaches, players, everybody got anything right. And maybe you do, but I'm just like, I know there's a couple glaring omissions to me, and we'll talk about them after the break.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
We are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. So, as we were talking about before the break, we were talking about some of the best teams in the league. Some of the teams are going to be in the playoffs, and that comes with that. Some of those teams have very good players. And a lot of those players made the Pro Bowl. I mean, obviously, the Pro Bowl isn't what it once was in terms of the recognition of it, in terms of like guys actually wanting to go and play in the Pro Bowl. But it's still a very prestigious honor. It's still something that most players, though they may not outwardly say, they still want to get acknowledged as one of the best at their position and one of the best in the league. So even though guys may end up turning it down in the end, they're still always happy to get selected, as they should be. But what comes with that, you come with guys that made the team that maybe should not have made the team. And speaking of one of those guys, I mean, it's tough for me to say that because it's tough for me to say this because he's been one of my favorite quarterbacks and one of the best quarterbacks in the league the last 5 to 10 years. But there's just no way Aaron Rodgers should have made the Pro Bowl, at least not on the original ballot. Like, if he got it as an alternate, by all means, I understand. That's cool. But Aaron Rodgers this season, compared to some of the guys that they left off the list, just not right. So, first and foremost, they left him off the list for one Brain Dakota Prescott. And in my opinion, that's absurd. I mean, like we talked about with Dak earlier this season, he's second in the league in passing yards. He's got 26 touchdowns, which is more than Aaron Rodgers' 24. He's got more picks, but, I mean, again, Aaron Rodgers is very risk-averse. He's not going to try to force it. He's not going to throw the ball up that much. And, I mean, that's to his credit. He only has 2 picks on the season, and that's great. But at the same time, a lot of that comes from him being willing to eat sacks, throw the ball away when no one's open, as opposed to giving his guys a chance, which, I mean, to each his own. I'm not going to tell Aaron Rodgers how to play the quarterback position because clearly he's better at it than me. But, excuse me, it's just I don't see how they could leave him off. I really don't. I mean, along with that, he's, like I said, he's 3rd in completions, 3rd in QBR, 5th in total touchdowns. He's just been one of the best quarterbacks this year, and it's just like, if you don't give it to him, I'm not going to say like give it to him as in like he didn't earn it, like he's earned it. But if he doesn't get it this year, during his best season of his career, I mean, like, when are you going to give it to him? Especially when it comes to Aaron Rodgers having a down year. Because it's like, obviously, if Aaron Rodgers was having some of his prolific passing years, in like he has in the past, then all right, I can understand. You may be giving Aaron Rodgers the nod over a guy like Dak, but Aaron Rodgers is below Dak in terms of completion percentage, with Dak being 65.5 and Aaron Rodgers being 63.3, sandwiched right between Mitchell Trubisky and Jared Goff. Aaron Rodgers is who no one is arguing should make the Pro Bowl. He's 11th in yards, behind Tom Brady, who's having a down year, behind Kirk Cousins, who we'll get to in a little bit, right above Jimmy G, but he's well below Dak. I mean, some of those Dak numbers are garbage time. I'll give you that. That's going to be an argument people make, and I understand that. He had big passing numbers against the Packers, for one, and most of that came when they were down 31-3. He got his guys' numbers to look good against the Bears when he didn't really start doing anything until like 5-6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So I understand he's padded his stats, quote unquote, against bad teams and in garbage time, but he still has the numbers. I mean, I'm one that is not a big guy on quote unquote padding your stats, because like you still have to go out there and do the stuff. Like if he's not completing the passes and not hitting the guys, he doesn't get those numbers. So whether it's garbage time or it's not, he's still getting the numbers. So it's kind of hard for me to view that. Like I said, Aaron Rodgers has less touchdowns. Dak has 26 passing to go with his 3 rushing, I believe. And Aaron Rodgers is at 24. He's got less yards per attempt. Yeah, I'm trying to maybe. Oh, hold on. Give me a second here. Yeah. Dak is 4th with 8.4, and Aaron Rodgers is down at 15th. So he's got more of that. He's got a passer rating. I think Aaron Rodgers hasn't beat. Yeah, he hasn't beaten passer rating. But Dak's 4th in QBR to Aaron Rodgers, who's down at 17, sandwiched between Jameis Winston, who turns the ball over at a higher rate than just about anyone else in the league, and Jacoby Brissett, who's been a fine starter this year, but again, these guys aren't on the ballot for Pro Bowls. And it's just like, when you look at that stuff, it's like, how could you justify giving Aaron Rodgers over Dak this year at least? I understand if it's like a legacy thing with some of the older guys where they get it in just because on reputation and name value. All right, cool. And maybe it's because, all right, the Packers are the 2 seed with the first-year head coach. They're 11-3. The Cowboys have been underachieving this year, 7-7, but not. While some of that's on the quarterback, he only plays one side of the ball, and not everything's on the quarterback. So when you're going up against quarterback, it's just hard for me to believe that Aaron Rodgers has been better than Dak, at least this year. In the past, yes, but this year, I just find it hard to believe. And then, as I was saying before, Kirk Cousins is another one who, again, it's like, what more does he have to do in order to get a Pro Bowl nod? I mean, Kirk, and then for Kirk, I would take off Drew Brees, not because Drew Brees is having a bad year. He's having a very good year. It's just the fact that he's played 9 games. So when he's 6-3 in those games, but when you're a guy that's played a little over half the season compared to a guy in Kirk who's 10-4, how do you justify that? Like, it's not his fault he got hurt. No one purposely gets hurt in this league or in any sport. But at the same time, it's like, if you're a guy who has played barely over half the games, how do you justify getting in on the Pro Bowl over guys that are... It'd be one thing if he was just putting up astronomical numbers. He had like 30 touchdowns in the 9 games, stuff like that, but that's not where he's at. He's at 21-4, which is good, and it would be good if you added his averages of 5 more games to that. Like, he would be deserving of the Pro Bowl, but unfortunately he doesn't have those because he's played in 5 less games than everybody else, at the minimum. So just like it's just hard for me to this year to be like, all right, yeah, Drew Brees deserves to make it in. And again, a lot of that is just dependent on the fact that he's played in less games. It's like I said, he has some of the numbers that could put him up there if he was healthy the whole season, but because he hasn't been, it's tough. So, like, obviously he's going to be behind Kirk in yards, clearly behind him in touchdowns. Again, some of that's because he's played less games, but these things still exist. He's behind him in yards per attempt, which doesn't have as much effect in terms of games. He's behind him. No, okay, I forgot. I did forget Drew Brees has the best passer rating, but again, he's only played 9 games, so when you play 3 or 4 or 5 more games, there's chances to bring that passer rating down a little bit. Even though Kirk is still 4, so it's not like he's having a bad year. He's still 4. It's not the same. He's 3rd in QBR to Kirk's 9, but again, less games. It's hard to factor that in. So that's really my basis on believing that Brees doesn't deserve it, just because he's played less games. I mean, again, he's been great this year. He's been great in the past. It's probably just more so, just like Aaron Rodgers, more of a legacy, reputation kind of thing. But when you're talking about guys, when you're talking about this year, just this year, it's hard for me to justify getting a guy in that's played 5 less games than some of the other guys, especially when the other guys have comparable numbers. If it was a situation where no one else in the NFC was playing that well at quarterback and Drew Brees' numbers were blowing them all out of the water through 9 games, by all means, put Drew Brees in. I have nothing against Drew Brees. I love Drew Brees. But when you have guys that are deserving, it's tough for me to justify it. And that's just my opinion. You guys may disagree, and you are more than welcome to disagree. I love debating people, so I would love to hear your opinions on this in the ratings and on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, Instagram, whatever platforms you guys use. But that's just my opinion, and I'm just giving my opinion. You're allowed to give your opinion. We can each have our opinions on this. And the last one I'm going to touch on is for Pro Bowl snubs is Josh Jacobs, who is having a phenomenal rookie season. He's been arguably the best offensive player on the Raiders between him and Darren Waller, who also could have made the Pro Bowl, but that's neither here nor there. And he just got caught up in the Ravens. I don't want to say hype's not the right word, but just like in the Ravens. Just got caught up in the Ravens, basically. Like, I mean, the Ravens got 12 Pro Bowlers, led all teams clearly. Like, it wasn't even close. They got the long snapper, and that's how much respect people have for the Ravens this year. But in terms of numbers, I mean, Josh Jacobs has 1,100 yards on the ground and 7 touchdowns to Mark Ingram's 963. He has 10 touchdowns, but again, when teams come into game plan for the game, you're as much respect as they give to Mark Ingram, you're stopping Lamar Jackson. If on all those read options and those zone read plays, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm trying to get Lamar to give the ball up as much as I can because he can do things that no one else on the field can do. So I'll take my chances stopping Mark Ingram for a gain of 5 as opposed to letting Lamar keep it and getting 20. So again, Mark Ingram's had a great year, and the Ravens deserve their respect for what they've done this season. I understand why they got all their Pro Bowls, but just like when you have a guy who's coming to the league and put up numbers that he has, again, obviously touchdowns are really what's holding him back most likely, but he's a rookie. He's their only real offensive weapon, so they're trying to stop him, and he's still putting up great numbers. It's like, I understand why I didn't give it to him, because most of the time you don't give rookies their first year in the league these kind of accolades unless their numbers are astronomical. And his numbers aren't astronomical. They're very good, but they're not astronomical. So I understand why he didn't get it, but it's just that would have been a nice one to see, just because, again, Mark Ingram, I know Ingram, no issue with him making it as an alternate. I mean, they're going to be in the Super Bowl probably, so they won't even play regardless. So Josh Jacobs might get in, even though he's hurt right now, so we'll see if he's healthy enough to play. But that just would have been a cool story, just to see a guy come in, first year in the league, I mean, it stinks. It's tough because his team isn't that good, so that's part of the reason why he didn't get in. If the Raiders were in more playoff contention at this point in the year, he might have been more likely to get it. But because they're not, I mean, the Ravens deserve every accolade they got. So I'm not going to sit here and be mad at the Ravens for getting all these players in, but just would have, like I said, it would have been a cool story to Josh Jacobs to get in. So even though I spent some of this topic talking about how I don't think Drew Brees deserved to make the Pro Bowl, I'm going to spend the next segment bigging him up and talking about how he's easily one of the top 5 quarterbacks to ever play this game. And depending on how the season turns out, or next season turns out, he could sneak his way into the top 3. I mean, when you look at it, I mean, we're going to talk about it. You might agree with me. I'm just saying. You might. Well, like I said, after the break, we'll talk about it, but I mean, the numbers are going to be tough to debate. So we'll get to it after this last break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. So, as I was saying right before we had our time away from each other, Drew Brees. Now, he set the passing touchdown record on Monday. I mean, he set the completion percentage record in the same game, but that's neither here nor there in terms of what we're talking about right now. But it's still pretty cool. I mean, the more records you have, the better your case is. But where does he rank all time? Now, these kind of top 5 lists, top 10s, whatever, all subjective. You has 5 different people. I mean, they're going to have the first 3 names on my list should be in everybody's top 5. If they're not, then don't listen to them. And, I mean, again, people are allowed to have their opinions. A lot of people's opinions are wrong, but they're allowed to have their opinions. So there's 3 guys that should be on everybody's list, and these 4 and 5 positions are where things get tricky, in my opinion. You may disagree with me, you may agree with me, but that's just how I feel. So, where does Drew Brees sit all time? So, I'm going to start at number 1. Obviously, it's got to be, in my opinion, who the GOAT is. And this one should be an easy answer for everybody. It's Tom Brady. I mean, he has, on top of the fact that he has the numbers in terms of he's second all time in passing yards behind Drew Brees. He's third right now in passing touchdowns, even though he'll get to second, whether it's this weekend, because he's 1 behind Peyton right now. So there's this weekend, next weekend, whenever. He'll get 2 more touchdowns, I would think. I mean, you never know. But I would think he'll get 2 more touchdowns this year to pass him. And even if he doesn't, worst comes to worst, he just comes back next year and does it. I mean, that's an easy thing for him. So that's 2. So he's 2 and he's top 3, soon to be top 2 in those 2 things. He's got 6 Super Bowls, been to 9. I mean, obviously, 6 and 3. It's more than anybody ever at any position. So he's got all those Super Bowls. He's got the 4 Super Bowl MVPs. He's won the league MVP 3 times. He's got 5 first team or second team AP All-Pro honors. So, I mean, in my opinion, it's hard to say how you can have anybody above him. Personally. I understand people are going to hold some of the losses against him, and I mean, you can, but it's kind of the same thing with LeBron. When you're a guy that gets there all the time, you're bound to, no one's going to go, unless you're Jordan, no one's going to be perfect. no one's going to go undefeated in their finals or Super Bowl appearances. So I don't hold those losses against him too much. I mean, in the middle of his career, when he went 10 years between Super Bowls, all right, you could. But now that he's won, 3 in the last 5 Super Bowls? Yeah, 3 in the last 5. After winning 3 and 4 to begin his career, I mean, come on. It's hard to argue against him. And I mean, plus, on top of the fact that he has all his accolades, the Super Bowl rings, he has the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history, 28-3, Falcons. I mean, even if you say he shouldn't have won, the Seahawks won because they just give the ball to Marshawn Lynch like they should have. I mean, Pete Carroll just didn't want Marshawn to get Super Bowl MVP. I'll go to my grave saying that. But even if you say he shouldn't have won that one, I mean, you can't take away that Falcons one. Now, people will try to argue, Kyle Shanahan, they should have ran the ball. They shouldn't have taken, Matt Ryan shouldn't have taken that sack in field goal range. Like, all true. But Patriots still need to score points to win. As much good as the defense played there down the stretch, they still need the Patriots to drive. The Patriots still needed to drive down the field and score on all those drives in overtime, and Tom Brady did that. Case closed. He's the GOAT. So that's number 1. Number 2, in my opinion, even though some people, I mean, again, I don't think there's that much of an argument for number 2 either, but it's Joe Montana. Now, Joe Montana's biggest thing is that he does not have the all-time numbers. In terms of, like, he's not that high up there. He's 17 all-time in terms of career passing touchdowns. And he's 20th, I believe. Yes, he is 20th all-time in career yards. But he's got himself 4 Super Bowls. I mean, that in and of itself, already enough. And that doesn't even include the fact that he has the 2 league MVPs, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, and 5 first and second team All-Pro awards. I mean, what else? What else do you need to see from the guy? Personally, in my opinion, there's not really much else I need to see in order to determine where I think he ranks all time, and that's why I'm going to keep him at number 2. He's my number 2. Again, the biggest knock on him is just the career numbers, but I mean, some of that's due to injury, and other things, some of that's due to he played on great teams, so he didn't really need to do that as much. But at the same time, he has good enough numbers to where that kind of stuff doesn't really matter to me personally. But again, that's just me. Other people, you are more than welcome to disagree with me, but that is just me. So that's how I feel on that. So he's number 2. Peyton, in my opinion, number 3. He could have been higher if he had more Super Bowl success and more playoff success. I mean, some of that is his fault, some of it isn't. Again, when you're going up against Tom Brady most of your career, you're bound, especially as good as he's been, you're bound to lose some of those matchups, and unfortunately that's just kind of how it went for him. It's very unfortunate, but it happens. It does. It happens. So, but I mean, at the time he retired, he was number 1 in yards, number 1 in touchdowns. He's won 5 MVPs. He's won 1 Super Bowl MVP. He's been awarded All-Pro 10 times, first and second team. The numbers speak for themselves. The accolades speak for themselves. Luckily, again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but luckily he was able to get that second championship, because if he would have finished his career, 1-2? Yeah, 1-2 in the Super Bowl. Man, that argument would have been rough. But luckily he got the second one, so he's got 2. Whether you say he got carried or didn't get carried, he still won a Super Bowl. You can't take that away from him. He's locked in number 3, in my opinion. He would have been locked in number 3 even without the second Super Bowl, but just second Super Bowl locked it in. It's like, all right, yeah, no one's gonna top him in terms of top 3. So this is where it gets interesting. So we got 4 and 5. Now, in my personal opinion, 4 and 5 is between Drew Brees, Dan Marino, John Elway. Again, you may disagree with me. I know there are going to be people out there that say, oh, what about this quarterback? What about that quarterback? I love a healthy debate. We can talk about it. We really can. But this is my list, so this is how I feel. So, in my opinion, it's tough because, like we talked about, Drew Brees is going to have all the major career passing records, most likely. I mean, we'll see. Like him and Tom Brady will be the big guys that it kind of ends on. So he's got to make the list, in my opinion. He has the one Super Bowl. I mean, if he gets the second Super Bowl, he's a confirmed lock, much like Peyton was in the top three. If he gets the fourth one, if he gets the second one, he is a confirmed lock in the top five. He's going to have the numbers. His biggest thing was that he got hurt by the middle of the middle of his 30s, where he was just on terrible teams. Like, let me read off some of these numbers to you. The man had starting in 2012, so a couple years after the Super Bowl, 2012, the teams went 7-9, 11-5, 7-9, 7-8. He missed a game, and then 7-9. So that's 3 7-9 years, 1 7-8 year, and 1 11-5 year. In those 5 seasons, in order, 2012, 7-9, he threw for 5,100 yards, 43 touchdowns, 19 picks, which is a lot, but still. Second year, 11-5 year, he went through for 5,100 yards, 39 touchdowns. The 2014 7-9, 4,900, almost 5,000 yards again, 33 touchdowns. 7-8 year, 48, almost 4,900 yards, 32 touchdowns. Last 7-9 year, 2016, 5,200 yards, 37 touchdowns. Now, if he just had anything other than historically bad defenses, he probably wins at least one MVP award during that time, and then his resume is sealed. Like, that's going to be the biggest knock on Drew Brees, the big fat zero in the MVP column, because all these other top guys have at least one. Marino's got one, Elway's got one. So that's the biggest knock on him. But again, you only play offense. He only plays offense. It's not his fault that his defense was historically bad. There's only so much he can do about it. It really is. So that's why I feel like, again, he's going to come up with all the numbers. He doesn't have the MVP, but he's got the one Super Bowl MVP. He's got 5 All-Pro teams. He's made 5 All-Pro teams. And again, like I said, right now he's first in yards and first in touchdowns all the time. So, in my opinion, it's hard to leave him out. So I'm going to keep him at 5. So that leaves Elway or Marino at 4. And personally, just because I'm a guy that loves the quarterback, I've just grown up loving the quarterback position, the way it's played, all that stuff, the talent that some of these guys have had. It is hard for me to leave Dan Marino off my list. Especially as a guy who's 5th all-time in yards, 5th all-time in touchdowns, which is higher than Elway, who's 9 in yards and 12 in touchdowns, respectively. Who's won an MVP. Didn't win a Super Bowl MVP, but because obviously he didn't win the Super Bowl, but he's made 6 All-Pro teams. And this guy, when you just look at the numbers, he threw for 5,000 yards and 48 touchdowns his second year in the league in 1984. Now, you could put those numbers in today, and that's MVP caliber. So you can only imagine what it was in 1984. But now it's like we're in a time period where it's designed to pass the football. You got more strict rules on the outside on defensive backs in terms of what they can and can't do to receivers. You got more open offenses. You got pass interference is called more. You got ways where defenders are discouraged from trying to go after the quarterback in certain ways because you're afraid they're going to get a flag. It's designed to pass the ball. So you can understand why the guys like Drew Brees, Peyton, Tom, some of these guys like Aaron Rodgers, these kind of guys that are coming up in the newer era, or the newest era, have some of these gaudy numbers just because that's the way the game is designed. So when you look at the fact that he was doing this in 1984, almost, we're coming up on what, 90? We're coming up on almost 40 years since that time. And he threw for 5,000 yards and 48 touchdowns, which would be, if you tell him to for that, when Mahomes threw for that last year, it was absurd. And many people don't do that. And he did it almost 40 years ago when it was absolutely unheard of. It's still unheard of now, but it was like no one was doing it at that point. So it's just like when you got numbers like this, and again, it's not some of the talent he had around him it's not exactly his fault, but the numbers he put up, especially at the beginning part of his career, they're absurd. They're really absurd, and it's just like it's too hard for me to leave him off the list. With the talent, I understand he doesn't have Super Bowls, and that's you play to win the game. As Herm Edwards says, you play to win the game, and he didn't win the most prestigious prize. Well, he won the MVP, but he didn't win the Super Bowl, which is why you're playing the game. So I understand why people will leave him out of the top 5. I get it, but just on pure talent, you look at the numbers, it's just like I'm not saying you have to make a great argument because I can understand if you have like guys like Elway or other guys in the top 5 outside Jordan, Dan Marino, but I'm an eye test, I'm a stat guy. And it's just like, when you see Dan Marino play, you see the numbers he put up, it's just like, it's hard to be like, this guy wasn't one of the 5 best quarterbacks to ever play. I mean, he may get surpassed later on by guys like Rodgers and other people that come along in the newer time, because again, he didn't win the big game. He only got there once. I mean, it is what it is, but in terms of pure talent and the numbers, it's hard for me to leave him off my list. So that's my 5, and that's my time. I want to thank you again for tuning to the GSMC Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. If you please could, make sure you subscribe, listen, so you can make sure you listen to the podcast on whatever format you listen to your podcasts on. We always try to put our best foot forward, so we would love to make sure you tune back in. Make sure to give us a like, 5-star review, rating, just so we can continue to get better. Say what you want. If you agree with me, let me know. If you don't agree with me, let me know. I'm more than happy to hear you guys' opinions on this. Like I said earlier, find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, any social media platform you have. Come find us on it. We can talk. I would love to hear your guys' opinions on the things I've said in this podcast. And that's been my time. I want to thank you again. My name is Chris Blades. Tune in again next time. Peace.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.